Welcome to the program. I am your host, Andrew Wilkow. It is 8 p.m. here on the East Coast. And today the Supreme Court began hearing oral arguments in the case of Murphy versus Missouri. Several Republican-led states are pushing back on the Biden administration's claim that it should have more power to coerce social media platforms. Senator Rand Paul called this the most important First Amendment case in modern America. Well, I sat behind this desk a little shocked when I found myself agreeing with Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson on the issue of whether or not Trump should remain on the ballot. She actually had a very compelling view of the 14th Amendment, and it's the one that seemed to dominate how the court viewed the Colorado case. Here she is. I'm not sure if I'm a fan anymore. She seems to think that the First Amendment's a little too restrictive for the government.
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. I mean, what would you have the government do? I've heard you say a couple times that the government can post its own speech, but in my hypothetical, kids, this is not safe, don't do it, is not going to get it done. And so I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information.
Exactly. Joining me on the program, my first guest is a friend, colleague, and co-worker. He is the host of That Kevin Show right here on the Salem News Channel. All right, you and I both do radio and television. We live and breathe by the First Amendment, and there is a Supreme Court justice saying, well, the government can't be hindered or hampered when it comes to free speech platforms. I mean, that's frightening.
Andrew, yes, thank you for having me. I love being one of your colleagues, honored to be one of your colleagues. How exactly is the government hindered in having its own social media free speech? Like, if the government just really sucks at drawing a following on social media, that's not anybody else's fault. Learn how to influence people and become your own best student of the medium. But why on God's green earth is that everybody else's fault that must be regulated then by the person that's the worst at it? That doesn't make any sense.
One of the things they seem to be debating was, when does concern turn into pressure, right? If the government is concerned about, let's say, vaccine hesitancy. And there was a moment there where one of the justices, and I forgot which one, talked about the government having the ability to demonstrate its concern, but not put pressure. If the government calls you up, that's pressure, right? If you're operating a free speech platform, if we get a call here at the Salem News Channel from the Biden FCC and they're like, we don't exactly like some of the things you're saying, they aren't making programming suggestions.
Well, no, they would never say that they're making programming suggestions. But Andrew, let's just reel the clock back nice and slow for everybody that was publicly educated. Here we have the issue in front of us where Ketanji Jackson Brown is making the argument that the government needs to be able to more or less enforce its cause. We just saw that in the pandemic. And I just had this argument with friends last night. Not only did they lie to us from the very beginning, they knew they were lying to us from the beginning, and we were not allowed to have recourse to dispute it. It's not enough that they're allowed to put their version or view into the mix. It's that when they add that element of control to it, you and I lose the ability to actually know facts. That's tremendously different than the kind of rosy scenario that Ketanji Jackson Brown was painting in the soundbite you played, where the government's just trying to do the good thing.
You know, I was watching pro wrestling with my son the other night, and I don't remember the government disclaimer that what we were watching wasn't real, right? I mean, when does the government start telling us that pro wrestling is not real, or that lightsabers aren't real? Okay? The idea that if somebody, I think that, for all the talk about the free speech movement starting in Berkeley, California, no, it started in the 1700s with the
Right.
First Amendment.
Absolutely.
The founders of this country were like, we're creating a government, but we aren't going to let them do mind control. You could say whatever you damn well please.
King George didn't get to have absolute sway. Nobody should today. And I'm sorry that that comes at a kind of a shocking, empathic hit to the Biden administration. But that's the way this works. We are allowed, and Hillary Clinton was actually quite famous for saying this. We're allowed to disagree. In fact, we're encouraged to disagree where the disagreement parts ways with the actual truth. And that's why what America has, Andrew, and I know that you believe this because you preach it every day for 3 hours. America is a unique experiment in what these rights actually mean. And we cannot allow it to be bogarted or taken captive by those that would return us to the land of, serfs and owners. It's just not, we can't do that.
I'll make this easy on any Democrat who thinks that the government. Would you have wanted Trump to have this power? That's all I need to know. Would you have wanted Trump to have this power? If your answer is hell no, well, then we agree.
Well, you're just advocating for a bloodbath, aren't you?
Yeah. See, that right there, and I'm going to be doing this in the argument segment coming up in just about a minute and a half. The answer to that is more speech, not censorship.
The tremendous prophet that was Rush Limbaugh, and you and I both owe a great deal to him because he paved a way that very few could have. He always argued that when they try to tamp down on speech, the solution is to scream louder and to scream more consistently. And until we do that, and unless we do that, we will lose America.
Yeah, and I never thought, I thought that was something that we all agreed upon, that I don't like what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. I
Right.
got to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you.
All right. Coming up in my argument, we're going to go over this. The media is lying. Should somebody forcibly fact check them? Should they be forced to run disclaimers? Or is it that it's up to people like me and people like you to go out and say, okay, you're telling me one thing. I'm going to see if that's correct, and turns out it's not. That's what free speech is. And once you go down that path of hate, well, we don't like hate speech. What's hate speech? Well, it's any speech the government hates, that it never ends. My argument's next.